All right, everyone, good morning to our participants here on Zoom and to those who are watching us live on Facebook. Good morning, good morning. Now, I am Jess, your host for today's webinar. And just a quick reminder for everyone, especially for our participants here on Zoom, kindly turn off your videos or your camera audio, and of course, be engaged and attentive during our session. Avoid any distraction. You can also use the chat box to ask questions or even post your comments while teacher Dar or our speaker will do the demonstration later. Now, for our webinar series entitled Hardest Webinar Series, it is made possible with a partnership of UP Diliman College of Education, Art Education Area, and Trimex Colleges. For our webinar session today, we will be conducting a watercolor landscape painting workshop for junior high school teachers. This is again, it's not limited to educators or art educators. Again, this is open to everyone. Either you are a teacher teaching art, or if you're just someone who is artist at heart or into art. All right. Now, of course, I want to check if you guys are active. So I want to connect with you as well. If you guys are excited, all right. If you're excited right now, kindly type E for excited on the chat box. So let's see in the chat box. There we go. Hassle. Good job. All right. There you go. Karen, you just post like small E, so it's just a little bit excited. All right. How about are you ready, guys? If you're ready, if you can wait for us to start this session, kindly type R. For those who are watching currently live on Facebook as well, please do the same. Kindly type R if you are ready for our session. Christine, good job. Awesome. All right. Now, before we start, if you have materials, kindly prepare so you can paint along with our speaker today. All right. So this morning, let us meet our young entrepreneur and educator and also watercolor painting expert. So, our speaker is a full time literature teacher and a high school mindful art club moderator of Assumption Antipolo. He's currently taking a Masters of Arts in Education, major in art education in UP Diliman, and the owner of none other than Dar Murillo Art That Shop. Now, everyone, let us all welcome Teacher Dar Murillo.
Hi everyone, good morning. Again, this is Teacher Darwin, and for our art jam session today, we'll be doing watercolor landscape painting. We will try to cover for our today's session the following. So first, history of watercolor painting, also watercolor painting in the Philippines, materials we need or you need to do a watercolor landscape painting, basic watercolor techniques, and we'll be doing question and answer portion after the workshop and the demo. Are you all ready? Let's go. Welcome to our very first art jam or art workshop entitled Watercolor Landscape Painting for Junior High School Teachers. Well, it's not really exclusive to junior high school teachers alone. Everyone's invited. Parents, educators, teachers, even students who are interested to learn more about watercolor painting. So we'll start with the basics. For starters, watercolor. I don't even know her. So watercolor is believed to be one of the hardest mediums to master because from the name itself, water plus color, our best friend would be the water. And we know how difficult water is as a medium to control. So what more to paint with pigments using water. Okay, so traditional versus modern watercolor paints. Traditionally, we follow two basic ingredients for traditional watercolor paints. First would be the pigment, obviously, and the second ingredient is gum. And this gum is made from boiling animal skin and bones. That was before. Right now, the ones we have today, the modern watercolor paints, they're made of two ingredients, just the same, well, almost. The pigment and the gum, which is not anymore made from animal parts. Uh, we get this gum from trees, okay? Usually from acacia tree. So that's different. Talking about water-based mediums, we follow this list. We have watercolor, gouache, fresco, and many others. But when we talk of water-based mediums, the first paints that come to our mind would be watercolor and gouache. So what's the difference? They're far different from one another in a way because watercolor, let's say, it's the lighter version of gouache, and gouache is the I think it's just safe to say that it's the opaque version or the opaque equivalent of watercolor. So it's more flat as compared to watercolor paint. When you apply it, of course, on a surface, on a paper. So history. It's also good that when we teach our students about watercolor painting, we start with definition and the origin or history. It's good that we present art history to them so they can better appreciate whatever they will read from either the lecture or workshop. So the first watercolor works that ever existed on Earth would be those that were found in a cave paintings dating as far back as 64,000 years. So how were we able to, or how did we know about this? Well, good thing these paintings existed, or these paintings were made in a cave. So until now, we can still witness how marvelous they are because um, they were made in a cave, inside the cave. So there's no sun, which will make the pigment fade away eventually. So they're perfectly preserved in caves. During 15th and 16th centuries, proofs that watercolor paintings flourish would be maps. So watercolor paints were deemed to be the most effective medium in uh, illustrating maps or for map making. And elite people would patronize or would use watercolor paints for leisure painting. And not only map making, similarly, they also use watercolor paints for rendering topography of an area. Just the same thing. During the 18th century, there's this movement called English watercolor movement. This happened in New York. It's English, so from the English people. And this was when watercolor painting started to flourish even more, and the influence became larger, going across Europe, even to Asia. Asian countries like China and Japanese would have evidence also proving that they had their different ways of coming up with watercolor paint. That's why we have the calligraphy art in Japan, brush art in China, and we would see these from ancient scrolls. They would use watercolor like materials to paint sceneries, images, and the like. In the Philippines, I was not able to really locate and search for credible sources as to how watercolor painting originated in the Philippines. It's very vague what I read from NCCA was that watercolor painting or painting in general started here in the Philippines when the Spaniards came over and they introduced to us the kind of art they do, and they would teach Visayan people how to paint landscapes, how to do architectural design out of watercolor paint for churches and parks. And right now, the organization that is well known here in the Philippines, they advocate for watercolor painting as a means to further promote local art. They're called Philippine Guild of Watercolorists. And right now, a lot of people, especially millennials, young ones, are into watercolor painting because of the aesthetics. It has a soothing feel, okay? And students, especially young ones, really like illustrating using watercolor. So for our workshop, we'll be needing the following materials. So water, paper, brush or brushes, watercolor paints, tissue or rag, and mixing palette. Just a rundown of the materials. So water, obviously, it's always a giveaway since we're doing watercolor painting, we need water. And I would advise that you prepare two containers, one for clean water and one for dirty water, where we can wash our brush and get water to mix pigments or watercolor paint. And paper. For paper, ideally, we need to have at least a paper that is 150 grams per square meter or 150 GSM. While for lighter watercolor painting. For landscape, yes, that will do. But the most ideal would be 200 GSM. Usually, the ones being sold in bookstores like National Bookstore and in art shops are watercolor papers that are 200 GSM. For brushes, we'll be needing only one round brush, medium size. But if you want to really be particular with fine lines or fine details, you can add one small fine brush for finer details. But a medium-sized round brush will do. We'll just make use of the tip of that brush for fine lines. And of course, watercolor paint, any watercolor paint that are available. So tissue or rag, but I would advise that we use rag over tissue because again, we need to be as eco-friendly as much as possible. That's the least we can do to help, of course, Mother Earth continue to live and survive. Mixing palette also for mixing colors. It can simply be a flat container where you can mix pigments with water. Okay, so I'll go more on the details of the materials as we do the workshop. So I'll be doing now a demo. I'll be transferring to another device so we can capture a better frame for the demo. Okay, so ready your materials and we'll proceed now with the demo as I explain to you the things you need to do as we go with the workshop. I will also talk about the creative checklist and the basic watercolor techniques. Okay, so let's do this. As you can see, I already have my setup here and I'm ready for the demo. But before that, let's have first our mental creative checklist. First things first, you need to situate yourself to a place where you feel most comfortable and so you can freely move and that you have direct access to all materials you need. Let's have the materials now. I have here a paper. So I will be using this 300 GSM cold press paper. This is 8 by 8 inches by measure. Earlier, I forgot to differentiate or to discuss with you cold press versus hot press. So if you can see here, the surface, it's rough. That's because it's cold press. And if it's smoother and finer, that's hot press. I like cold press better because I like to play with the surface of the paper when I'm painting. And that holds water more. This next material is the watercolor paint. It's only Cotman student grade. I also have here multiple containers for water. Two will be for clean water and one would be for the mixing or the cleaning of the brush. I also have here the mixing palette, which I will be using to mix pigments, and as you can see, it's dirty. I also have here the brushes, and since I'll be doing a quick demo, I'll be needing two brushes. One is flat and the other one is round. This round brush will be used for the finer details. We'll be using the tip of it for the more finer details. The flat brush here will be used for the coating, basically, of the paper with water. I also have pencil, nothing very specific. Any pencil will do as long as you can erase it. I also have here the rag, which I will be using to pull water off the surface of the paper. Um, Also to clean it. I'll show to you later how to do it. What's beautiful about watercolor painting is that there are beautiful accidents that can happen, that sometimes you would not wish to edit it anymore because it adds a more soothing, a more whimsical effect. Lastly, the reference. I advise that you make use of one so you will have a guide on what to paint. Sometimes you would wish to have a uniform reference for everyone to follow. The one I'm using here is a photo I took myself when I climbed Mount Cubungan in Benguet. So I thought this is a beautiful reference. So why not make a landscape watercolor painting out of it? It's also a good prompt that you can tell your students to do when they have, ang mga bata ngayon mahilig sila mag-take ng photos, especially landscape photos from maybe one of their travels. You can also ask them to bring a reference na kuha mismo nila, na photograph mismo nila, and they can, follow it as a reference as they paint landscape. Yeah, you can also do plain air para live yung reference. You can go out and pick a spot where you can have a good view and use that view as your reference. But since it's the pandemic, I don't advise that because safety first. So let's just stay at home. Uh, I have here a paper with washi tape. I initially put this so I could have a nice and clean border. You need to start with an outline. So we'll be drawing the outline following the reference. And when you do the outline, it's important that you use a pencil so you can erase and modify as you go along. Um, yeah, for the outline, it's good that you also know the composition, the major compositions of a landscape painting. So you see here the background, the middle ground, and the foreground. So for the background, it's the farthest um, part, yung pinakamalayo, middle ground, middle lang, and then the foreground, yung pinakamalapit. It's also good to follow the rule na when it's background, it should be, again, it's farther, so color should be light and cool, middle ground, middle tones, and for the foreground, it should be close to the eyes of the viewer, so it's ideal that you use darker colors, darker tones, or usually warm colors pag foreground. Following that rule, you can already apply or discuss on an element of art, which is value, right? So when you do watercolor landscape painting, again, background value should be light, middle ground, middle tones, and foreground, darker tones, darker values. 'Di ba? May naturo ka na agad na element of art. With acrylic kasi, it's the opposite, right? I mean, with watercolor, you start first with the background. So you start with the lightest of colors. With acrylic, based on my experience, you start with the darkest of colors. And then you add the white until you add lighter colors or lighter values. Um, so that's it. With watercolor naman, we don't really use white paint. Our white would be the water. So the lighter color we want, the more water we add to just water down the pigment and make it lighter. Let's now go with the outline. Again, you need to follow. This is the foreground, the middle ground, where the sun is situated. This is sunset view. So we follow that. And of course, the background, the sky. Let's do now the outline. So scaling, proportion. Obviously, will allot the biggest part sa ating background. But we start with the foreground muna because we want more details sa foreground since it's the closer view to the eyes of the viewers of our painting. So I just outlined here the shape of the mountains and the sea of clouds, and I will just have a guide here of the sun para alam ko kung saan siya pag natabunan na to ng kulay. Now I'll be using this flat brush. I wish I have a bigger one so I can easily coat the paper with water. This is a technique we use, so we'll do wet on wet. So we need to wet first the water before we can apply more pigment. So background muna tayo. It's again the biggest part na mako-cover sa ating landscape painting. I'll be using blue but not solid blue. I'll be adding a little of gray or black para mas natural looking siya. Because if you will just make use of one color, say for example, blue, magiging fake yung kulay. You get what I mean? Parang hindi siya authentic. Kasi wala namang sky na solid blue lang. So mag-add tayo ng ibang colors to make it look more natural. Okay, so I'm mixing now blue and then watering it down with, of course, water and adding a little of gray. Here, slowly, when you do watercolor painting naman, you don't have to be very OC. The flowy your strokes are, the better. So again, following the reference, yung formation ng sky, hindi naman siya horizontal nor horizontal or vertical, it's diagonal. So yun yung illusion na gagawin natin with the background. So medyo diagonal yung formation ng sky. Again, hindi nyo papansin yung kulay kasi lightest muna. If we will start with a darker value ng blue, medyo mahirap siyang i-lift up from the paper. So maganda na water lang, tapos konting-konting pigment. Water down pigments para mas achieve yung um, smooth and soothing vibe. Now we'll do the middle ground. So I'll be adding yellow. If you notice, hindi ko masyadong hinugasan yung brush because I want to really connect the colors of the sky. So blue with yellow. It's okay that the color blue is mixing with the color yellow. Again, I'm not using solid yellow. I'm adding a little of orange and red and a little of blue to create coherence. Okay? That's unity. Unity, I think, is a principle of art. Yeah, the color should be coherent so we can achieve unity. Kasi pangit yung yellow lang na very distinct na yellow and blue magkahiwalay. Maganda na they mix up. So, it's still wet. So, I'll be pulling off some water using my rag so I can add more pigment. Yan, naglagay ako ng green intentionally so you can see how I can edit it. Just damp it with water and you can lift it up using a rag or using your brush. Yan, madali lang mag-edit with watercolor. That's also what I enjoy. Others would say na ito nga yung pinakamahirap na medium. I would say it's the medium na mas masarap laruin. So we'll add more colors. We're done basically with the lighter tones for both the background and the middle ground. We'll now do the foreground. Oh, mali ako ng kulay. It shouldn't be green, but that's okay. Again, you don't have to redo everything. Just dump it with water and lift it using a rag or your brush. Diba? Easy. Your best friend really would be the water. So, mas playful ka lang with water, I think, the more beautiful your artwork will be. No stress, diba? So for the foreground, since the mountain from my reference is grayish black, I'm following the same colors. So to make it look more natural, I'll be adding blue. Since the middle ground will be composed of yellows, orange, purples and blues para sa Sea of Cloud. I want the mountain to really blend well with the Sea of Cloud, so I'll add blue and purple a little. Medyo invincible, but the more dominant color would be black and gray. Purples and blues now for the Sea of Clouds, as you can see. Don't mind if mag-blend yung color ng mountain sa Sea of Clouds. It's okay. We want that effect. We want it to be very smooth lang and soothing. Now, we're adding more layers. Like Photoshop, maraming layers lang yung watercolor. So, you need to also be patient, especially when drying up your paper. If you noticed, we started with background, middle ground, and foreground. And then after foreground, we go, ideally, dapat background na tayo. But since it's still wet and mas dry yung middle ground, we'll go to the middle ground and add more layers. Yan. So far, we've discussed some elements of art like texture. You can also let your students touch so they can feel the difference between hot press and cold press. And diba, easily discuss about the element texture. We also discussed about the principle of art, unity. So I'm adding a little of green. This is an invisible color from the reference, but to add more, um, like to add cooler tone sa middle ground, I would add that. But later, mawawala din yan. So, there. I am letting first everything to dry up so I can add more layers later. So, we did wet on wet. Later, pag natuyo na to, we'll do dry on wet. Especially dun sa foliage, dun sa mga halaman. I'll stop here for the meantime. I'll just be showing to you a time lapse of the process kung paano ko natapos tong painting. So, here it is. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed our workshop for today. So, balikan lang natin yung mga natap nating competencies because I consulted Melx, the most essential learning competency set by DepEd. And so far, we covered the content standards on art elements and processes and features of art of Luzon. We were able to identify elements and principles of art in the production of art inspired by Luzon, Highland, and Lowland. It's clearly depicted with the reference we use. That's in the northern part of mountainous lands of Benguet. So pasok siya. With elements and principles, let's try to look back. Again, we were able to cover first texture with the paper, with the materials we use, also color. We were also able to discuss on space when we identified where we will situate the background, the middle ground, and the foreground. Also, for the principles of art, rhythm, with how we manage to uh, be consistent with the strokes. Okay, when we apply, of course, the watercolor paints on the paper, also balance. And what else? Unity with the colors. He wanted to make all the colors coherent with one another.
That is just, very fantastic, and we're really impressed, Teacher Dar. So, wow, thank you so much for showing us how to do that awesome and wonderful watercolor painting. All right, now let me just go back to what you've mentioned earlier, Teacher Dar. You've mentioned that watercolor is one of the hardest medium to master. So, given that you're really good at it, right? So, sobrang dami mo na sigurong nagawang watercolor painting, correct?
Yes, and as you can see, I actually managed to post some of them here sa background ko. And yung ginawa ko sa workshop, andito siya malapit. Para lang makita niyo kung ano na siya ngayon. So, ito yung finished output and the reference. Well, since it's a demo, it was very quick. Nakita niyo naman sa video, mabilis ko lang siyang nagawa. So, pwede naman yon as long as makita lang yung mga dapat papakita sa audience natin. And yes, I would always say that na mahirap talaga siya since water as an element, sobrang hirap niyang kontrolin. And feeling ko, birth element ko kasi water. So feeling ko, mas in tune ako with that element. So yun.
Wow, very smart then. All right. So, yeah, you know what? While you're doing that watercolor painting kanina, you made it look very easy. But I know, siguro meron tayong participants here na they paint along with you during the session. So please,
Yes.
everyone, let me just check if you are still active listening. So type Y if yes na nakafollow kayo or you did try. Wow, Irish. Awesome. Alright, so
Wow!
let's just go ahead. Let me get back to Irish. Si Irish lang ba? Si Hassel din. Awesome. So most of our participants here on Zoom, they did try. It's just wonderful, right? Okay, so let me just go back to you, Esther, Curie, and everyone here on Zoom. So now, everyone, we will open the question and answer portion. But before that, we will allot some time for you to think of your questions or clarifications to our speaker, Teacher Dar. So, ngayon, since we do really appreciate your time, gumising kayo ng maaga, baka yung iba sa inyo hindi pa natutulog. Right? So, sa paperworks are from work pa. And then, you still manage to attend our session today at this, early in the early. So, magbibigay tayo since we have this very generous speaker, Teacher Dar, magbibigay tayo ng 50 pesos. And I have to take care of I have to be careful kung baka mamaya dollar yung masabi
Baka
ko.
50,000 masabi mo.
Oo, nako. Alright, so 50 pesos para sa makakasagot ng unang question. And of course, ang una nating tatanungin, ayan, ready na ba kayo? Zoom people? Zoom peeps? Okay, so let's see. For our first question, drum roll. Okay, so number one, our first question. Right. What are the two main ingredients of a watercolor paint? Paunahan to, okay? So again, what are the two ingredients of a watercolor paint? Let's see.
Let's
Sino
see,
kaya
sino
munang
mga
makakasagot?
nakinig?
Siguro nag-iisip pa sila.
Yeah.
Right. 50 pesos din to. Alright.
Yeah,
Dagdagan nyo
and
na lang
we'll
siya na
send it
50.
via
May...
GCash. Diba?
Uh-huh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All
Ayan,
right.
someone, yeah.
Okay, would you like to announce our winner, Teacher Dar?
Sige, on my end, I can see na the first who successfully sent the correct answer is Hassel. And Hassel answered pigment and water. But sadly, it's the wrong pair of answers. So next na nagsagot, si Iris Joy Sebastian from SDO Quirino, and she answered pigment and gum. And that's the correct answer. So we're giving 50 pesos to
50
teacher Iris
pesos.
Joy Sebastian.
Alright.
Congratulations!
Teacher Irish, don't forget, and everyone who are watching this live on Facebook and yung nandito sa Zoom natin, please don't forget later nasagutan yung evaluation form natin para alam namin kung sino yung mga nanalo and we can contact you right away. Alright? Okay. So now let's move on. Syempre, yung mga nanonood sa atin sa Zoom, hindi sila dihado. Alright? So,
Yes.
yes, everyone, those who are currently watching live on Facebook, so ready na ba kayo? Post an exclamation point. Pag talagang excited kayo makakuha din ng 50 pesos. Let's see. Alright? I can see may mga heart reacts. Comment. Alright? Comment that exclamation point kung excited din kayo makakuha ng 50 pesos. Army, she's excited. How about the others? Alright? Okay, sige. Yan, si Sky, excited din siya. Now, let me go on and ask the second question, which is, what is opaque equivalent of watercolor? Again, what is the opaque equivalent of watercolor? Let's see, sinong unang makakasagot niyan?
Medyo mahirap tong i-spell. Challenging yung pag-spell ng correct answer. So,
Oh,
wrong
so
spelling
kailangan,
lang tayo.
yes, Teacher Dar. So kailangan natin i-consider ang correct spelling. Alright? Sige. Siguro medyo naglo-loading pa tayo sa FB live
Yeah,
session
medyo
natin.
delayed tayo ng 1 minute sa FBS. So, we'll wait for their answers.
Yes, kung sino ang unang makakasagot. Let me repeat the question. What is the opaque equivalent of watercolor? Opaque equivalent
Dito sa
of
Zoom, tama yung
watercolor.
mga sagot nila eh.
Yes. Oo.
Pero FB people muna tayo. Mamaya na ulit kayo Zoom. Give
Gusto ko yung
chance to our
super
friends na
ano,
nanonood sa Facebook.
exactly. And gusto ko yung super talagang black and bold yung kay Jopet Solis. Yung exclamation point niya. Hindi halatang hindi
Yes,
excited si Sir
oo.
Jopet.
Ayan, someone
Oh,
got the correct answer with the correct spelling.
awesome. Teacher
And I
Dar.
think she won then last time. Do I announce now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sige, our winner is, she answered gouache, and the spelling is Gouache, correct spelling. So the winner is Teacher Esther Belaos Ludan. Congratulations, Teacher Esther. Don't
Congratulations,
forget to
teacher.
message us through the Facebook page your details, your GCash number, so we can send right away your prize. Congratulations!
O, di ba? Nanood ka, natuto ka, may 50 pesos ka pa.
Totoo,
Okay.
napaka-generous.
Exactly. Now, sige. Now, let's see. Balik tayo sa mga participants natin sa Zoom. Ready na kayo?
Yes.
Alright, ready na sila. Alright, so for the last question, cave paintings date as far back as how many years ago? I repeat, cave paintings date as far back as how many years ago? Ang
Ayan,
bibilis,
bilis.
teacher! Hindi sila
Wow, we really
excited.
have like the
Alright.
best participants for this webinar.
Okay, so who won this in this question, Teacher Dar?
I don't, yeah, actually, may ano eh, halos same time, 10:40 nag-send yung apat and all their answers are correct. But on my end, I don't know on your end, ang
Sige.
unang nakapag-send ay si Joymi Villamena. Sa'yo rin ba?
I would like to confirm yes. So,
Okay, congratulations, Miss Joymi Villamena. You won 50
50
pesos
pesos.
cash. Congratulations.
Alright. So, later madadagdagan na yung fund mo sa GCash. Alright? Okay, so baka naman may mga questions sila and clarification. So guys, now it's part where you can post all your questions or clarifications and then i-ask natin si Teacher Dar. Okay? So let's
Yes.
see for our
And fret not because we'll have more rounds for the games, di ba? We'll give away mga around 150 pesos pa for 3 questions later. But for now, Q&A muna tayo. Serious questions muna.
yes. So baka na-excite pa kayo doon. So, yan. Calm down and let's do ask questions to our Teacher Dar. Sige. Tumitingin din ako na magpo-post or mag-ask sa FB natin. FB viewers, you can ask questions to Teacher Dar sa Zoom. All right, let's see. Well, thank you so much, teacher. Yes, Miss Irish, for that suggestion. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Let's see. No questions so far? All right. So since we don't have any question, all right. So Deanne Rish from our Facebook Live viewer. So Teacher Dar, what subject is best suitable for watercolor medium?
Subject or brand? Sorry, may you please repeat the question, teacher?
Yes. Deanne Rish just asked what subject is best suitable for watercolor medium.
Okay, medyo confusing. Subject ba? Brand ba? Or particular subject matter on watercolor painting?
Okay, so
Well,
can you
to
please
answer how I
clarify
would
that?
interpret the question, siguro, for the brand, if you're asking about the brand, brands don't matter actually when you're painting. You can start with the very basic ones. Naalala mo, teacher, just nung elementary tayo, yung yellow colored container
Yeah.
that can also do as a material, especially right now that we're doing everything online and we're following an online setup when we teach our students. It's better to consider very practical determinants sa
Mhm.
pag-ask sa mga estudyante ng dapat na daling material. So, whatever really is available at home, pwede. Okay?
They can
And
use
if
that,
wala
right?
talaga, sometimes you can use like pigments from plants. Yung flower na blue, yung pea plant, that can serve as a watercolor paint. Didikdikin mo lang siya.
Mhm.
Dragon fruit, yan, organic, 'di ba? And yeah, yung cheaper watercolor paints, pwede naman yon. What's important really is you teach the students the process. It doesn't really
Yes.
matter kung mahal ba yung product unless of course you're planning to pursue a professional career out of it. Yeah, and
Thank
if
you so much,
it's
Teacher
about
Dar.
the
Yeah.
subject matter, well, the topic really which we want to give for this webinar is landscape painting to
Mhm.
also capture yung elements and principles of art. So when you're teaching watercolor, it's best really, well, as for me, it's best that you start with a landscape painting. Since going back to our earlier years as promising artists, di ba, usually dinadrawing natin, teacher Jess, di ba, rice field,
Sila
yan, natin
yan.
yan.
Yeah.
Susunod,
Tapos,
bahay kubo.
tapos may araw na
Susunod na lang
sumisikat sa
yun.
dalawang bundok.
Totoo. Yes, totoo. So, dalawang buntok dapat yon. So,
Yeah.
with that as a reference and the familiarity that we have, it's good that we start sa landscape. Kasi pag portrait na, watercolor portrait, that's a different story altogether and medyo mas mahirap yon. So at
Mm.
least you start with watercolor and study elements and principles of art, and then you can progress to different subject matters like portraits, ganyan and whatnot. And I hope I answered the question
I believe you answered the
correctly.
question, Teacher Dar, because she or he, she actually was referring to the theme, which is you mentioned more of
Mm-hmm.
pwede mag-start ng landscape muna, because I
Yeah.
think that's the
Mm-mm.
natural thing na kung saan tayo nagsistart, right?
Yeah.
Madalas, lalo na sa mga students. Now, I just want to add, since we are currently discussing about the theme, you've mentioned earlier na yung reference mo is that's your actual photo, right? When you
Yeah.
went up to Mount Kibungan, correct? So
Yeah.
it's just fascinating that when you know art, you can actually make a memory extra special. Kasi hindi lang siya photo. Ginawa mo pa siyang art na ikaw mismo yung gumawa. Right? So, that's really great. Now, Hassel has a question here. Let's see. Ask ko lang po, sir, what's the best paper to be used for painting? I tried to use bond paper. Medyo kulubot kasi pag bond paper. So, Teacher Dar?
Yeah, to answer, this is a good question ano, and a very valid question sa watercolor painting. Like what I said in the video, it's best to use a paper na at least 150 GSM for lighter watercolor painting sessions kasi mauhold niya yung water. Ang bond paper kasi parang nasa 80, 100 GSM lang sa or gram per square meter. So better to use 150, at least 150 GSM. But for a like a heavier watercolor painting, best talaga is 200 GSM. But again, considering practicality and yung available resources sa bahay, ang hirap namang mag-require, 'di ba, na kailangan 200 GSM. So at least 150 GSM na paper, that will do for a lighter watercolor painting.
All right. Okay. I think you clarify and answer the question as well, Teacher Dar. Now, let's pause for a while and let's play a game ulit. Okay? So, welcome, Hassel. Now, punta naman tayo muna sa ating Zoom people or participants, viewer. So, guys, when you're ready, alam nyo na ang gagawin nyo. Type kayo ng R for ready. All right. So again, this is for 50 pesos ulit for our question. Second question or fourth perhaps. Okay. So let's see. R. There you go. Army. R. Ready, ready. Abigail as well. All right. So here is our fourth question. Okay. What do we call the community of artists bound by their pursuit to explore and promote the art of watercolor here in the Philippines? Again, what do we call the community of artists bound by their pursuit to explore and promote the art of watercolor here in the Philippines? So let's see for FB Live viewers. Tingnan natin kung sinong unang makakasagot niyan. Very competitive talaga ang mga tao sa Zoom. Teacher Dar. Nakuha nila ang tamang sagot. So, later, yes, mag-ask din kami ng questions sa inyo ulit. Okay, for now, let's give it up for our FB Live viewers muna tayo. Okay, I'll repeat the question. What do we call the community of artists bound by their pursuit to explore and promote the art of watercolor here in the Philippines? Teacher Dar, do we have a winner? Oh, dear, you're muted.
Sorry, sorry about that. I'm seeing here one correct answer sent by our previous winner then, kanina. I think she won ata kanina. I'm not sure. Or last time ba. The winner is Teacher Esther Belaos Ludan and she answered Philippine Guild of Watercolorists. So that's correct.
Congratulations! You've got
Congratulations.
50 pesos. All right. So, Esther Bilaos Ludan, congratulations again. Now, let's go back to our Zoom peeps. All right. So, dito naman tayo. Fifth question. What are the three basic compositions of a landscape painting? I repeat, what are the three basic compositions of a landscape painting? Sige, tingnan natin
Nabanan to
kasi.
ng ano, mabilis na internet, ano.
Yes, may factor din yun. So, after nyo dito, after natin mag-end ng session, pwede nyo i-message ang mga provider, ISP, ayan. Thank you. Dahil mabilis
Ayan.
ka, nakakuha ako ng 50 pesos. Ayan. So let's see. Teacher Dar, may nakakuha na ba ng tamang sagot?
Yes, and yeah. Si Hassel. Hassel answered background, foreground, and middle ground. In any order naman, so tama.
Yes.
Background, foreground, and middle ground. Congratulations, Hassel.
All right. Congratulations, Hassel. Now, let's see. Going back to our question and answer portion. May nakita ko kanina dito. Let's see. Let me just scroll up. Uh-huh. Yan. Okay. So, from Sky Imperial, Teacher Dar, what color or what watercolor is easier to use for beginner? Is it one in tube or the palette one?
Actually, it doesn't really matter because they're all the same if it's in tube or in pan. With my experience of buying watercolor paints, I just noticed na syempre mas mura yung nasa pan. Okay? Kasi mas konti siya as compared to tube na marami. Tsaka, ang watercolor kasi, since your best friend would be the water, yung kapiranggot na pigment from the watercolor paint, malayo na yung mararating nun. So, I would suggest, if you would ask me, watercolor in pans would be the better option as compared to tubes na matagal maubos and natutuyo rin kasi ang watercolor eh. Although pag binasa mo siya, good as new, pero mas makakatipid ka, especially for beginners kung nasa pan. 'Di ba? Again, what I mentioned earlier, pwede yung mga nasa yellow lang na container, yung cheap ones.
Mm-hmm.
If gusto mo lang talaga matry initially, best brand siguro for beginners, for students. I think this is also student grade, yung Prang, very famous na brand. Yung maliit, parang yung six colors nila, nasa around, I'm not really sure, but parang less than 500, I guess. And that's a very good brand na. And I have friends sa fine arts na yun talaga yung ginagamit nila, even sa mga plates nila sa school. So, there. All in all, like what I said, hindi naman talaga siya sa brand. Brands don't really matter as
Yes.
long as you have the passion for doing art or painting, kahit anong materials pa yung meron ka, you'll do well and good.
I love that, Teacher Dar. It's really encouraging, especially dun sa mga wala talagang budget, right? Bumili nung talagang dekalidad na mga materials or art materials, especially for the watercolor paint, right? So now, my
Yeah.
additional questions is Sky Imperial. Teacher Dar, what can you use po to make the watercolor painting last longer?
Okay, that's a very good question, ano? Especially since we mentioned na pwede namang cheaper brands yung gamitin. So the challenge with cheaper brands or cheaper or low quality watercolor paints would be they don't last like longer as compared dun sa mga branded paints. The best way to preserve would be, of course, yung temperature. Dapat hindi sobrang init, especially if you'll put your paintings on display. It's ideal that you frame it. And before framing, ang ginagawa ko minsan, may nabibiling spray coat na transparent para lang ma-coat mo yung surface ng painting at hindi siya maapektuhan ng weather, ng temperature, at mas tatagal siya. Kung hindi man forever, at least hindi mag-fade out yung color. And kanina nga, following yung historical detail ng watercolor paints, diba? Our earliest reference would be the cave painting. So,
Yes.
na-preserve natin siya kasi nasa loob ng cave, malamig, hindi naaarawan. So, hanggang ngayon, pwede natin siyang makita. So, we follow that same analogy na pag mas maingat tayo, mas tatagal. Pwedeng hugot yon, di ba? Parang pag mas iniingatan mo at mas binibigyan mo ng care and love, mas tatagal siya.
Exactly, right? R for relate. You can post R. Now we have one or last question from our FB viewers. So we have Miss Rose Cesar. So she asked
Mm-hmm.
Teacher Dar, what kind of animal hair is best for brush, and where can we buy them?
Okay. Correct. Ano yun na, pro question na yun na.
Exactly, yeah.
What I use actually kanina is synthetic. The best brush I read would be yung mga natural na brush na goatee brush and yung goat hair at saka horse hair. Pero
Mm-hmm.
they're very expensive. But then
Yes.
again, marami kasing factors na i-consider eh. If you're just a hobbyist, you can start with synthetic brushes, the ones available in the market. I'm using Winsor and Newton. Mura lang yun, nasa around 100, less than 100 lang siya. May mga natural brush na buhok talaga ng hayop, like yung goat saka yung horse. Medyo mahal to. But again, if you're really very serious about painting and if pro ka na talaga or borderline pro ka na, you can of course invest, no? Kung you have the budget, why not? And if that makes you happy and you have nga the resources, go for it. Diba?
Yan. Thank you so much, Teacher Dar. Kasi baka mamaya meron tayong nanonood ng mga students din currently and hindi sila aware na meron pala iba't ibang klase ng brush. Right? So baka feeling nila is
Yeah.
same lang siya. So again, just like what Teacher Dar mentioned, if may budget kayo, because for the natural hair, compared to synthetic, or yeah, yung ginagamit ni Teacher Dar currently, it will cost you an arm and a leg talaga. Right? So kung gusto niyo mas cheaper and
True.
gusto niyo talagang for fun lang, pwede kayo mag-invest din sa mga mumurahin lang. Pero talagang ma-unleash niyo yung full potential niyo as an artist. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
True,
much, Teacher
true.
Dar. So last question from our Zoom participants. Do we have any other questions? Kasi meron kaming surprise para sa inyo. And for those who are watching us live on Facebook as well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being with us for the whole session. So in three, two, one. All right. So wala na question from our Zoom participants. Now, earlier, before we start our Q&A, I asked them who among you are actually trying to paint along with Teacher Dar. Right? So let's see. Let me just scroll it up. And ang unang nag-post is let's see. Okay. You can do this, Jess. Ayan. Dami E and R. Okay. I did try. Okay, so let's see. Irish. Si Irish Joy, ang unang nag-post ng Y for yes. Alright, tinry niyang mag-paint along with Teacher Dar. Now, can we try to see what you did earlier, teacher or Miss Irish? You can turn on your camera now. Tapos, pakita mo sa amin yung gawa mo. Let's see. Sige, hintayin natin si Miss Irish.
Yeah, it's okay if hindi tapos because we understand kasi yung
Yes.
latter part ng demo nag-time-lapse na tayo. So you can show a work in progress. Oh,
Oh my
nice!
goodness! See? Very short lang pero tingnan mo yung gawa niya. So congratulations,
Ah,
teacher.
yeah.
Teacher Irish, I
And
think
she
this
yung
one.
anak
painted it,
ko,
I
pati
think,
yung
with
anak ko, Vic.
her
Halika
kid.
dito, bilis.
Wow!
Wow.
Bilis, anak.
Wow.
Maybe we can take
Oh,
a photo with them, Teacher Zell, so
Sige,
we
later,
can,
later. Mhm.
immortalize this moment.
So, you see
Sige.
guys, those who are watching this live on Facebook and even the participants here, pwede nyong gawin siyang pang-bonding sa mga kids nyo. Or maybe kung may mga kapatid kayo, right, na mas bata. So, sige, Teacher Iris, nasan yung cute mong anak? Talagang very
So
happy si mommy.
cute.
Ayan.
Iya siya.
Wow.
Yay! Wow!
Okay, sige.
Oh, dalawa silang
Dalawa sila.
gumawa.
Yeah. So, since
Yes.
very giving naman ng ating speaker, si Teacher Dar.
Ayan.
Okay. So, bibigyan namin kayo, Miss Irish, supposedly 50 pesos lang. Pero since talaga natutuwa kami, gagawin namin 200 pesos. Alright? Dahil
thank
nakakatuwa.
you.
Yay!
Alright?
Thank
That's
you.
200 pesos. Later, don't forget na i-message yung Facebook page namin, which is Heartist Webinar.
Yes
Alright?
po.
So,
Okay, yes.
thank you so much for painting along with our awesome speaker teacher, Dar as well. Now, Teacher Dar, for before we close this session, ito na ba yung pinaka-last na session natin, webinar or workshop?
No. Sobrang swerte ng participants natin ngayon dahil right now, we will invite everyone to our next webinar and it will be on, sige, wait lang natin yung isa-share ni Teacher Wendy sa screen natin. So again, this is called webinar series because it's a series of webinars and workshops about art
Yes.
education. So last Saturday, we had our very first webinar. It's about DBAE or discipline-based art education. Alternate siya. So ngayon, art jam tayo, workshop, watercolor landscape painting. So next Saturday, we'll be doing another webinar and it will be on diverse learners in art education. So if you wish to know how to apply that theory in your plans, how to adjust your teaching strategies following the idea na we have diverse learners in class, may it be online or physical, we're very sure you will enjoy and you will learn a lot from our speaker. And ang speaker natin next week is none other than Teacher Jess Eliadora, our host for today. So it will sure be a blast. So I hope all the participants here, right now I have 23 participants, we have 23 participants here in the Zoom meeting room. I would like every one of you to attend again next week. And sa Facebook, we're having around 50 viewers right now. I also would want to invite every one of you FB Live people to attend next week. So the title of our webinar is Diverse Learners Seeing Silver Linings in Differences with a Heart. With our speaker, Teacher Giselle Eliadora. Again, that's on May 8th, Saturday next week. Same time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. But we'll be live at 9:30, so we have enough time to share the
Yes.
post to our friends who might be interested. And this will happen simultaneously sa Zoom and FB Live, just what we did right now or earlier.
All right. Again, Teacher Dar, thank you so much for a meaningful art workshop focused on watercolor landscape painting. All right. So, everyone, lahat ng nanonood, please don't forget to fill out the evaluation form. Ayan, sasagutan po natin yan. And then, someone from our admin team will reach out to you regarding the certificate. Okay, so pwede nyo scan, ayan, para mas mabilis, mas convenient. So, okay. And of course, please don't forget to like and share our Facebook page, Heartist Webinar. Yeah, so we can keep you
Yes.
posted for our upcoming events. It's free. May chance pa kayong manalo. So what's
Yes,
stopping you
and
from
we'll
attending our next session?
correct. And we'll keep the recorded live post running in our page so you can still watch. You can still ask your friends to re-watch the video. And after watching, they may answer the evaluation form for them to get certificates. Ano? And you have until the end of the day to send the accomplished evaluation form for a certificate in exchange.
Yes, awesome. And let's see. Okay. So, see you guys again next week. I hope na may natutunan kayo, nag-enjoy kayo with your family members during this session. So, guys, again, thank you so much and see you next week for our session.
Bye!
Yeah. And sa
Everyone,
mga
be sure
nanalo,
before you
be
leave,
sure.
we'd like to ask you to turn on
Picture.
your videos so we can take a photo, please.
Yes.
For
Mhm.
documentation po.
Yes. And if we're still live on Facebook, guys, para sa mga nanalo kanina, don't forget to message us on our Facebook page, your contact detail. Para mas-send na namin yung 50 pesos. Walang kasamang jacket. Dahil summer hot. Okay. So, ayan.
Please turn on
Nakakatuwa
your
naman.
camera.
All right, game.
One, one, two, three, smile. One more pa po. One, two, three, smile. Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank
See you next
you.
week. Bye.
Hello, Jerome. Hello, Java. Hello, Miss Kiri. Hello, friend.
Thank you po.
You're welcome. Sana
Bye-bye.
makita ulit namin kayo next session.